Senior lawyers have set up a peace committee to mediate in the crisis of confidence between the Chief Justice of Nigeria, that's Justice Ibrahim Tanko Muhammad, and colleagues over welfare issues. Partner Ivy Law Practice LP, Mr. Fisayo Esan Olusegun, joins us now to speak on the crisis in the Apex Court and how it could affect justice delivery, as well as what could be done to improve the welfare of the judges. Welcome to Newsday.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you for being here. I'd like to start by asking you what you think of the issues that were highlighted by the aggrieved judges.
Well, anybody who's read that memo will know that it honestly speaks for itself. There are some who have contended that those memos were not signed, and they may just be, throwing people off the trail. But so far, it's been confirmed that there's actually a memo officially. And if you read through the memo, you will find that the memo speaks for itself, ranging from issues from, electricity, internet provisions, provisions of residential apartments for justices, and a range of other things. So I think that memo passed the message quite clearly. If you read it, you will not be in doubt that there's a big problem, at our Apex Court, and it gives a lot of concern. One would never imagine that a day will come that, that kind of memo, you will have to read that kind of memo. It's a very troubling one.
Now, talking about the nature of that letter, a statement from the CJN says judges in all climes are to be seen and not heard.
Yes.
Now, he also likened the letter by the Supreme Court justices to dancing naked at the Market Square.
Yes.
So, should the justices of the Supreme Court have handled this maybe behind closed doors, at least to protect the image of the court?
Well, when you say justices or the bench are not supposed to be seen, but they're supposed to be heard, or they're not supposed to dance naked in public, there's an assumption there that someone is supposed to clothe them. There are steps to have been taken. You don't strip them of their clothing and then not expect them to dance naked. So it's one thing that works for the other. If the needful, you could imagine someone who was appointed as a justice of the Supreme Court, maybe squatting somewhere else, living in an hotel. There were even times before where a judge or a justice is even never allowed to relate to people. So, they're not influenced, or they're put somewhere where, they're just protected, because what they do, the body they carry, it's very sensitive and very sacred, I must say. So there are grievances, there are issues, and the memo speaks to it. And I think that all stakeholders should come together and just accept that, look, immediately those issues should be looked into.
I guess reasoning would suggest that the fact that an entire Supreme Court or Supreme Court justices, people of such intellectual caliber,
yes,
would be pushed to the wall to resort to releasing a memo that was for internal uses.
Yes.
It just goes to show the desperation on the part of the justices. And like you said earlier, if they are naked and screaming running around and screaming around in public, it means that something is going very wrong.
Yes.
My question is, how did it get here? We in the public, we see what we think are signs over the years as to the deterioration of this institution,
yes,
but we never thought that it was actually this serious. So how did it get here? And now that the memo has been released and everyone is talking about it and we're all shaking our heads in shame for our country and the third arm of our government, is this enough of a catalyst to see change be brought about, or is this just going to be another, kicking the can down the road and we get distracted by something else?
Honestly, I'm a realist. I like to face reality. And this is not the first time that we've had similar concerns of this nature before. And for me, it should be about institutions and not about individuals. And when you look at an institution as the apex court. First of all, it's his constitutional role he plays, separation of powers, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. So they are power, and from the constitutional perspective. And when you look at what has been happening in the Supreme Court, you will find that not every or not each of the justices is necessarily involved in the administrative side of things, right? Okay. So that normally is within the purview of, the CJN himself. So that is what brings out the kind of scenario we've seen in the memo. So obviously you even find from the memo that they've made references to attempts to have escalated the issues and they were not properly addressed. And I am aware that earlier on, some groups had made repeated demands that the judiciary should lead by example and, make their budget very open. Till date, I'm not aware that, that budget has been released. From the last budget, if I'm correct, I think it's about 120 billion for the judiciary. And the question is, you should be transparent. Where did the money go? Because if the justices could have been pushed that far, then there's a live issue. And there's need to see through what's going on there. There's obviously money on the table. So you start raising issues like cars, vacation for justices. It's a lot of work. And that's one of the institutions that should give everybody comfort in this system of government. You don't toy with it. So if justices could have resorted to that, I think immediately it should be looked into. And the executive should not toy with it. They shouldn't just say it's a judiciary issue. It involves everybody. That's one institution you don't touch. You know why? Because once you start to not take care of justices, then you start to open them up to influences. Do you understand? You know how powerful governors can get? You know how powerful politicians can get? They will do anything. We're just talking about elections and all the things that happen. So you're supposed to go to court and get, fair, adjudication of your case. Well, when a judge who is seated does not even have a house, he's not in the proper frame of mind. So he doesn't have a house, yet someone is offering him millions of dollars. It's just, so the reasoning is, anything the justices require, take care of them. Let them do their job at the apex.
I think you answered the question I was just about to ask you, how this crisis in the apex court would affect the delivery of justice, but I think you've covered that. Do you still want to throw more light on that, or
when people mention about judges or members of the bench who are sharp, I always say that there are people, or there are people on the bench who work day in, day out. They are not compromised. They are very industrious. They are very resourceful. It's a lot of work, and I can't imagine someone dedicating that much of your life to something, and you now have to think of internet, start to think of diesel, start to think of where you're going to put your head. It doesn't make sense. Or legal assistants. Even ordinary state judges have legal assistants, let alone Supreme Court justices. So these are issues that should immediately be addressed.
So I'm sorry, because you already touched on that. So yes. You mentioned stakeholders.
Yes.
I just want to get the opportunity to ask you if there are some other stakeholders that we might not necessarily be paying attention to, and if they are pulling their weight.
Well, it may just be possible as well that there are people in the system who have also exploited loopholes. So the charge or the admonition now is that, look, let this be looked into thoroughly. It's embarrassing enough that the memo came out, but not to do anything about it, it will even be, worse. Because I don't rule it out. I don't. Because there's a ministry. You know what goes on with civil servants and all that. But there's a problem. There's money on the table. Where did money go?
Well, I'd like us to focus a bit more on the CJN's response. Yes. Because for me, it didn't exactly inspire confidence for me, but then I'm a layperson. That's why you're the legal practitioner. It seemed to me that he tried to absolve himself of any blame, and he talked about the fact that the economy is very tough. And actually, it really seemed like his hands are tied. There's really nothing that he can do to improve the condition of service right now. So If that's the true picture, what then is the way forward, especially with 2023 coming up? Like you said, there are going to be a lot of court cases, and we do not want these justices, to be influenced by individuals.
Well, I think, first of all, we're in a democracy, right? And in democracies, the buck stops at the table of the leader. This is not the first CJN that we're having, Chief Justice of Nigeria. A time will also come where he will have to leave office and someone else will occupy that role. So I think he must think a lot more for the legacies he's leaving behind. And, I know there's a lot of pressure, but he must also stand for the institution. If there are problems, there must be ways to carry everybody along as a leader. So a situation where 14 justices now write a memo and they said they've escalated, those issues are not being treated, it speaks for itself. It's not, but he may be under a lot of pressure himself, but these democracies, there's no excuse for the leader. That's why you're the leader. And that institution is so sensitive, because it's the last straw. Everybody will say, okay, look at, elections. Once the elections are over, you start to nurse this hope that the court will give you justice. Imagine going to a court that is already, compromised or uncatered for. So it's sensitive, and the CGN must carry that burden. He must bear it. Because now he's almost, speaking for the entirety of the Nigerian system. Because once the judiciary is tainted, that must not be the case. So a justice of the Supreme Court who should be in some seclusion, focused on his work, does not have a house. So maybe he's forced to live with somebody. Where does he put his materials? Those kind of things.
It's an unfortunate situation.
It is.
And
quite.
The fact that it has reached the public ears makes it even more cause for concern. But thank you so much, Mr. Fisayo, for coming in and having this discussion with us this afternoon.